Hi, this is Scott Bogren.
I'm Rich Sampson.
I'm the editor-in-chief of Rail Magazine,
I'm the editor.
and we'd like to welcome you to our 35th edition of Rail Magazine, an edition that focuses on the really extraordinary passenger rail renaissance in the great city of Minneapolis and its twin city, St. Paul, and really throughout the state of Minnesota.
Yeah, that's right, Scott. We were just there for Community Transportation Expo 2014 in Twin Cities and thought and kind of interacted with the energy going on for not only rail transit but passenger or transit in general across the Twin Cities. And we wanted to focus on a lot of the developments that are going on across the state, but also right in the Twin Cities, and tell the story of how people are focusing on transit as a way to revitalize their communities.
Yeah, we did a special Twin Cities transit tour one evening during the expo where we got to ride buses, light rail vehicles. We got to take a really inside look at the two ends of the new Green Line, the St. Paul Union Depot, and then what used to be known as the interchange, but now is called the Target Field Station in Minneapolis. And I did ask the question, why did it change from the interchange to the Target Field? And the was one of my favorite answers during the tour was we had was it $4 or $5 million reasons to make that change.
Right.
But one of the things that really we want to talk about when it comes to this edition is like what's happening in St. Paul and in Minneapolis. What is making this region of the country embrace and really engage with transit in such a concentrated effort, and not just the citizens, but also with a lot of funding?
I think it's something that is kind of unique so far in the Midwest. We've seen this a lot in the western part of the country, and kind of in the southeast and southwest. But the middle of the country hasn't seen as concentrated activity for urbanism and kind of integrating transit into neighborhood planning. So we kind of felt this was a regional model that is somewhat unique, but really it stems from how the area thinks of itself as a region and not just independent cities and jurisdictions. It all started with the formation of the Metropolitan Council back in the 70s, initially to deal with water issues, believe it or not, and that's kind of been leveraged into transit, into police and fire, and all the things that make a region cohesive instead of a whole bunch of factions. And that development of the kind of regional planning and regional governance model has spilled over into the way that Twin Cities thinks of itself, and it's just recently rated one of the most, if not the top destinations for millennials in the country. And the twin kind of patterns of millennials and also baby boomers moving back into urban areas instead of suburban outlying communities really made that the direction of rail and bus transit in Twin Cities something that was a priority for a lot of people.
Yeah, a lot of times you see these demographic trends and these trends that we talk about without real context when it comes to public transportation. And one has been how millennials, which is kind of a phrase meaning people under the age of 35, generally speaking, kind of fit into that name, and how they want not necessarily to live, to work, to play centered around their transportation being auto-centric. And there are all sorts of studies out there, and we've covered some in Rail and in CT Magazine, certainly on our website, that talk about that. But in Minneapolis, St. Paul, you see what happens when people take that seriously, when that development pattern starts to come about, and you see that those folks want to be able to work in the technology fields, and they want to be able to do that and be just as mobile as they've always been, but not necessarily dependent upon an automobile. And that's not to say that this needs to be laid out in the traditional transit versus car methodology, but really it's more of a quality of life, it's economic development, and we saw a lot of that when we were in the Twin Cities.
Yeah, and the bigger picture is that transit isn't an end in of itself. It's parks, it's schools, it's being able to walk to the grocery store, the hardware store, and when you need to go longer distances, say to the Twins game or to a gallery or the University of Minnesota, that's what transit makes possible living in a neighborhood or district. So that all kind of fits together, and you see it really in between. The twin downtowns are the core ends of the new Green Line between St. Paul and Minneapolis, but in between there's a whole host of neighborhoods and communities that are tied together in a very kind of profound way like never before.
And one of the things that I think you see in Rich's main feature piece is where the argument or the discussion now isn't about whether or not there will be extensions on rail lines. It's communities vying where they're going to go, who gets them first. And the other thing you really see in Minneapolis, St. Paul, is that intermodalism that we like to always talk about. BRT is going in. Bus systems and bus lines and bus routes are not being reduced as rail is brought in, but actually are increased to better serve the rail system. You see commuter rail. So streetcars now, I know, are something that they're talking about right now in St. Paul. So all these forms of transportation, bike share, the Nice Ride bike share is a really well-used and simple to use bike share. All these things are coming together in the Twin Cities in a way that I think Rich is right. We haven't seen yet in the central part of the country, in what is traditionally known as the Midwest.
Yeah, and I think what you're going to see next is Minnesota broadening the reach to include some regional rail lines to Duluth, to Rochester. They're having some trouble getting outside of the state, but there's plans for 2 different lines, one, the Northern Lights Express up to Duluth, and then the Zip Rail down to Rochester, home of the Mayo Clinic and a bunch of other prime medical facilities. So I think you're going to see that regional focus kind of interact with the existing bus, rapid transit, light rail, and commuter rail modes and kind of come together to form a pretty extensive network.
So we hope when you take a look at this edition, you'll be able to see all of those pieces and how they work together. We've covered the Duluth Union Depot with both its history and its future. We've covered the Zip Line. We've covered the Northern Lights extension and that line, the express line there. All of what's happening in Minneapolis and in St. Paul. There's a great piece on James J. Hill and the Great Northern Railroad and really then further the intercity, almost intercontinental rail line, the Empire Builder that runs out of Chicago and eventually gets to Seattle and always has gone through Minneapolis currently at the St. Paul Union Depot.
Right.
All of that comes together in this edition to really give you a good portrait of rail and other forms of transit all across the state of Minnesota. And we certainly do hope that you take the time to enjoy the edition and that you engage with us on what you want to see next in Rail Magazine. You can reach both of us. We'll have our email addresses here at the end of the video, and follow Rich's excellent Twitter feed. And I'll let you sign off as well, Rich.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at RailMag. And so check us out there, and also can check out Scott's feed at CTMag1 on Twitter. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you for Rail 36 next time.
Thank you.